up, sing. Lights, the mirrors. Because at this festival, we have glass. Welcome to Anxiety Group. Allow me to describe to you who anxiety is. Anxiety is that person at the party that no one invited.
Hello everyone, welcome back. If you're returning, welcome if this is your first time. My name is Nibol and this here is Mental Health with Nibol, a place where we talk about our mental health challenges, things like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, psychology and human behavior. And this year we promise that we're coming back to you bigger and better. As you can see, our environment, it has changed. I hope you guys are as excited as I am. Now for this first episode of Mental Health with Nibol, you guys will bring you a really talented young man. He is a poet, he is a writer, like he has 2 books out there that most of you have read. During lockdown alone, he was able to put up over 30 shows that people attended. He did charity for one girl who had cancer. I guess by now you know who I'm talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing. Are you guys excited? You guys want to know who is coming? Eh? Okay, first and foremost, before I say who is coming, do not forget to subscribe, do not forget to like, do not forget to comment your opinion on who this person is. If you've liked this episode, if whatever you like, and if you don't like this video, double tap the dislike button, you know, like let us know what you're thinking. The more you like, the more you subscribe to these things, the more these videos are recommended, and slowly but surely we build a small mental health community. So ladies and gentlemen, introducing Lus The Poet.
I'm Lus, full name Lus Aziz Alif Abdul. I go by Lus The Poet. For those who know what I do poetry, spoken word, or you can call it performance arts. I coach it, I script it, I write it, I produce it. Basically, I venture in anything poetry. My mom was a counselor. Yeah, who used to write and also edit for so many people. And I was in touch with reading since I was a kid. Like reading, like normal reading. Remember I read The Big Volume of Jane Eyre when I was just like 11. Like the time I reached the literature checklist, I already read this thing. So poetry came in as a by the way at first. I just randomly bumped into a poetry collection that my mom was working on. So I read it and it's like different from the novels and everything else. So I I remember the very first thing I related to poetry was the Bible actually. Song of Songs was my favorite. I was 13 then. So I loved Song of Songs, and then it was really poetry or what it meant until I was 15. And I heard about a show that used to happen in MOOC called Kelele, a poetry show. So that was even before I attempted to write anything. I attended the event and it was awesome. These people were so good. Like Bash Mutumba would perform while playing the guitar. Then there was this guy we used to call Zombie, then Heights the Preacher. So when I went back home, I tried to write poetry. And then when I performed, it was horrible. It was very horrible. But I had ventured to like love it because of how they did it. So I remember I used to bother my aunt a lot to listen to what I've written. And before I knew it, I came up with one good poem and it led to so many things after that. Yeah. Books. books in 1 year, and they all sold out. That was last year. Yeah, and I've had 33 shows just last year. It's
what? Last year?
Yeah, 33 poetry shows, of which, as it's 9 of those were a partnership with Button Poetry. So it's been a lot of changes from the first time I really just entered into the art. But I would always tell people it's consistency. The passion is not enough if you don't really act upon it. Yes, I do. It's called Poets Don't Cheat. It has caused a lot of debate in people because of how the title is interpreted. But actually, when you tap into the script, it has a lot to do with mental health. Then it's comical because I'm a comical writer. Everything of mine, at some point, it's funny. Because people have tended to make depression a funny thing. Some people laugh about it, others just make jokey memes about it. So the only way to actually reach out and make an awareness is if you go comical, and you have to follow what the world, wants. So Poets Don't Cheat is a debatable script. Actually, in the script there is a debate, and it describes a story of 2 people who fell in love, and then one just became a violent lover, emotionally abusive, toxic and everything, to a point where they were, old. And then every night at dinner, the grandmother would always accuse the grandfather of cheating when the grandkids are there, when their kids are there. So it just describes the story of how everything that was supposed to be a beautiful thing led into a very bad experience for one person. And the grandfather just happens to be a poet, or someone who knows how to manipulate with, verbs. So that's how Poets Don't Cheat comes about. Yeah. It's supposed to be on 4th of February at the Uganda Museum, 4 to 7. And an early bird ticket is just 10,000. At the gate it's 20. Very affordable because we want you people to walk from your lectures we put the venue very, very, very close to you. Yeah, and we made it affordable. Because we've been away from you guys ever since June. We've been working with the other, because we balance the audiences. They are really not the same. The poetry audience has more young people than the adults actually. It's very surprising. But young people, yeah, they enjoy poetry way more than the adults. The adults enjoy a lot more like music, their own kind of music of course. And of course they never really compromise, but the young can actually tap into the adult audience and they enjoy it. So for this particular project, we're doing it mostly because we have more mental health, overloads in the young people. So we made it for that particular audience. Yeah. The generation before us believes that's not supposed to be a black people thing, and there are so many black people in the world. So you can imagine how many of us are never taken serious when we call out for any kind of help. Well, with work, I'll start with work because it has triggered most of my episodes. Those who know me know I'm a very handy boss. Yeah, I didn't want the title, but I think I have earned it in a very bad way. I am very pressuring when it comes to work, but that has been a result of what I've gone through relating that. So when I just started doing like the work I do, I was opposed. I was just 17, and all my uncles, I come from a family that everyone has made it by being in the army or anywhere relatable to the government things. My grandfather was in the army, Brigadier Fadul. His brother, the former President Amin Dada, they were all in the army. Then their kids were in the army. Yeah. They were half brothers. Yeah. So then their kids were in the army. Then their kids' kids were in the army. So that everyone who has prospered has had to go through something relating to politics or anything. And then there came me and my mom actually, who never wanted any of that. So she was casted out, and for her she processed it. Because as a woman back then, it was all about marriage. And Nubian culture, women are just supposed to get married. And then my mom didn't want any of that. So she became a single mom. So it was just the two of us the entire time. So when she passed away, I had to meet all these people that were supposed to be family but were new faces. And they had all these other ideas where my life should head, different from the ones she had, of which the ones she had were because of my interests. And then these people didn't care about what I can do or what I love or my passion. They just had this particular way that everyone should go. So it was a big change. So when I figured out that I actually think I want to do poetry, and I opened up about it, everyone was very negative, very, very negative. So for the first year, I did it forcefully. And I was lucky enough that it took me about 6 months to actually be accepted, because it's hard to be accepted in a poetry society. There are so many good poets who are still hustling for acceptance. So you have to have a little bit of luck on you. And most artists are very indisciplined. So you have to have that extra discipline, extra everything. And I was like the youngest everywhere I was the one who was below 18. Everyone else was, at campus or done with campus, or they're engineers who love poetry, lawyers who love poetry. So it was very intimidating. So I was getting that intimidation from the circle of my passion, then from home. So when I made 18, I told my uncle I really want to venture into poetry, because he used to do videography and audio production back in the day before he did everything else, and he had all the connections. And he promised that if I stopped going out and doing poetry from outside, then he would give me the connections. So I'd be like, I start with the humble phases of life, since I was still very young. And then I was home for 5 months, suffocating my fire, so waiting for him to do anything. And he just didn't. And then one time he just said, you can't do this. And then he did where I should go. So the option was, you either leave home or you do what I want you to do. And I left home. I'm a very stubborn person. I'm very daring. I do exactly what you don't want me to do. So I left home. It was very hard. I stayed in Machinde. A friend had rented a room at campus, very sketchy friend of mine. So she rented 2 rooms, one in Machinde where her father thought she was staying, and then the other where she actually stayed. So she was never in Machinde because her aunts were the neighbors, but the father thought she was. So when I was leaving home, she gave me the key. Yeah, I didn't know where I was actually going. I didn't know how it would look like, because I had left a very beautiful home. So I was used to, I was used to that kind of environment where the bathrooms are clean and there's a kitchen and everything. And then boom, it was a single room, non-tiled, no ceiling. The TV was funny. So it was transition after transition, and I had to be there because that's the only place I could be. I didn't have any money. So I was there for a month. I remember I used to take a jet to the National Theatre just to take a shower. Yeah, I would not use the showers because there were almost no showers. And there was one thing I remember, there was always this guy who used to actually spend the night in the showers. In those showers, you would find him in that tiny thing, laying paper down and literally sleeping, snoring. So I stopped using them even for anything because I thought now it's someone's home. It was very confusing. So that time was so depressing because when I left home, I got so distracted with all this stress, I couldn't create. Therefore, I had no work because I didn't have the value anymore. And I had just started up people started to like me. So now I have to be scarce. So after that 1 month, a friend of mine called Marybad was joining hostel at UCU. So the good thing about hostels there is that they're like rentals. So she invites me to stay with her in Mukono. So that was more relieving. And by the time she invited me, the damage has already been done. I was so depressed. I was negative. I was the most negative person you could be around. It was hard to transition from you have everything to you have nothing. I kind of did. I smoked a lot during that time. because I was in Machindi, the easiest thing to get there is weed. And your weed would put you to sleep, so I smoked a lot, more than you can ever possibly imagine. And it was blowing me a lot. Like, people would see that I'm very distracted. I remember I used to work with Kagai then, Chitara Nation, and Kagai always told me, Lus, you are very talented, but it is your focus that is ruining everything. And he would be so mad at me for it, because he's a very, very angry person when it comes to work. And I hated him for it at that moment, because I thought I needed that break. You know, all that victimizing you get in yourself, the self-pity. So I was that guy who was just always high. I remember I used to go to rehearsals to coach younger kids, like, and I would come with a bottle that was patched with like soda and like waragi. It was like intense. So it took Mary Bird taking me away from Machindi to Mukono, where her sister was very strict, and for some reason we got so attached. So she cast that all out of me, because she viewed life in a very different way, and she was prayerful. I am not prayerful at all. I have tried. My best friend took me to church, and I spent like half an hour on a phone call. Yeah, so I remember Jela was like very hopeful. She trusted that I would actually do a lot with poetry. You know, you guys should go to Nyege Nyege, you beg Nyege Nyege, beg Bayimba. And when I started taking up advice, things started to, you know, become very relieving. Yeah, and they took me to like a very different aspect of life. It took like half a year for the transition though. And during that time, I would get mad at anything they say that should be the right way to do things. I would get so pissed.
So they were like your support group?
Exactly, I was so detached from all their advice. I feel like they don't get it because, well, they are still rich kids and I'm not, and they have all their parents. So I would compare all those things and I would say, yes, I am the victim. They don't get it, and they did get it. I know Jela got it because she was more mature. She was going to LDC. So when I started trusting them, it got much easier. I stopped smoking, actually, completely. I still can't believe how easy it was to stop at that time. And I started drinking, but I would drink like one bottle of Smirnoff, and then, because my head was not set up for that, so drinking did not become a problem at all. And then I started to focus on poetry a little more, because now I had all this inspiration. And then I don't know how it happened, but the more I focused, the more it became toxic. The more I focused on making poetry, and it became too good and too likable and too accepted, the people that are around me became very mad about it. And I was too young to understand that jealousy is a thing. The only jealousy I knew was a girl being jealous of another girl. And now I was looking at people who were like 30 and above, literally, yeah, like doing things to stop you from to your next move. It was very scary. It was very, very scary. So I am one person who loves to be loved so much. I'm not very social, but when I'm around people, I want to be loved, because I was used to that. My mom loved me so much that I never felt unloved. And now I was starting to feel very unloved, unwanted in these spaces where I had to be there, you know, because I signed contracts to work with people and they don't like you and you're younger. So I didn't know what to do. And yet I had to keep creating, because now it was serious. I had contracts written, which means you had to deliver, and we had deadlines, you know, and there was, you know, rent, because I had to pay some of the rent of the hostel. I had to feed myself in case of any medicating. So like everything was new, and that became like another depression that was going to turn out to be chronic. It's going to be with you all the time. So I learned to get my strength into the workspace and deal with all these people's emotions. And now that meant that I had to lose some people that I was actually enjoying. Like there's people you work with and what they do, the way they do it makes you, better. And now those ones even hated me the most. So it meant that everyone I would have gotten inspiration from, all those channels were showing red, and I hadn't grown enough to understand that part. No one to actually talk to. I remember backsliding a bit to the weed. Yeah, no, actually that was more of a peer pressure. They used to smoke, and I used not to smoke. And usually artists who smoke hate those who don't smoke, because they smoke when you're there and they always feel, yeah. So to keep more in the circle, I would smoke, and then I would get all excited, and then they would love me a little. So every time I was around them, I had to, smoke. So I had to reach a point where I realized that now this is a backslide. This is a mistake. I can't keep doing this. So I stopped being in the circle. I looked for my own spaces, my own platforms. And now that decision is what made me Lus the Poet. Like before that, I was just that guy who does poetry in Star Nation, that guy who does poetry here and there. But when I started looking for my own spaces, like I left the regulars that we used to do with all these people, and I went to my own spaces, asked for stage somewhere else. Of course, some said no, but then those few that said yes, I remember the night when everything changed, literally in my head. I was at Rock Bar, there was rock comedy. It was one of the biggest comedy nights in Kampala. That was now 2018. No, actually 2018, the very beginning, Feb. And they had over 1,000 people every Tuesday. So one time, way before COVID came in, so a friend invites me. He's like, you come and check out this comedy night. I'll give you a free ticket. So I go. And then there was a guy called Brighton. He said he wanted to start doing poetry there. As the people settle in and the live band is playing, there should be a poet or two. So I tell him, I can do that. So he says, okay, next Tuesday. Just observe the night. See if you can manage these people. And then I remember when I observed the night, I knew I couldn't manage. Everything in me was telling me, tell him no. But when I walked to him, I was like, next Tuesday I'm on. And they said they were bringing Maro. So I had, Maro was the headlining artist, and I was performing after Maro on the program, because Maro was supposed to, usually they would put the live band, it performs, then a poet, then comedy starts. So the poet is someone they put as they are briefing the DJ about the comedian's tracks to come on, the program and everything. So you're literally the person no one will pay attention to. You're like a break in the show. And I come, and then I reach there at 5. The show begins at 8 meanwhile. Maro came to test sound at 6:30. So he said I should come and also test sound. So he's singing a song, and I do a very short poem. And he's like, you are very good. I need you on my album, my next album. And I thought he was kidding. I was like, okay, I'll be there. So the show begins. It was a political piece. So the show begins, and the live band plays, Maro plays, and people are enjoying the music. Those corporate audiences, they don't really shout, they just, very annoying, very, very annoying for an artist who shouts. So then I was coming next on stage. So Maro plays for me the piano, and he sings. And then I do this political piece, and whoa, the crowd was literally vibrating. The bouncers left the gate to come and see who was on stage, and then people were just throwing money. And I remember I had this backpack, so the MC just took my backpack, because I put it right there, and he just started putting the money in the bag. And then because it was shot by NBS, so the videographers, everything was just coming close. The videographers were shouting, and those were the times when Bobby had just come up, and they were singing the Ngule song on my poem. So it was intense. So I get off the stage, and they just call me into the manager's office, and they give me a contract there and then to perform every Tuesday, every single Tuesday. And I'm like, this is a big change. So I remember when I went back home, I was very excited but scared because I didn't sign the contract. I took it with me because Jela had done law, so I wanted to consult. So she checks through and she's like, it's okay, you should sign it. It's fair, you know. So I signed the contract and now I have to be there.
So up until this point, you've heard what Lus has been sharing, his experiences. So now I wonder if some of you have had a similar experience, especially along your journey regarding what you do. It may not be poetry really, it may not be writing, it could just be something else. I would like to know your opinion in the comment section. Like, tell us what you went through, how it affected you and what you did about it as we get into the rest of the story. Let us know what you think.
Who keeps asking questions? Is the music too loud? Are we breaking the curfew code? Will the neighbors call the cops? And then calls the cops to ask them if it's okay that we are having this party. Anxiety is looking for your keys while you're holding your freaking keys. Anxiety is you receiving a voice note that says, so I need to talk to you, call me later. And then questions start piling into your head. Talk to me. Is your mom dead? Is your house on fire? Did you get expelled from school? Oh no, did your parents get a divorce? And then when you call them later, they tell you to never mind, that it already passed. Anxiety is that time you order pizza online and after making your order, you accidentally say, I love you before hanging up the call. Anxiety is like an extra thoughtful evil twin. Wow, it was supposed to be for 3 months. By the end of the 3rd month, I had performed at the Comic Salvador's show. I was booked for Africa Laughs, the biggest comedy show in like Africa. I had a partnership with Anne Kansime's night at Teweza. I had Abayimba that year. I had Nyege Nyege. Like, I had literally every big platform, and every other poet had not tapped into this audience. And now I was so busy to even focus on who likes me, who hates me, and it's also a little bit grown, so it had gotten so professional. It was all about rehearsal and turning up, rehearsal and performance, rehearsal and performance. And one time my mentor has told me is that your worst performance can be your last. So make sure it's not a bad performance at all. So that thing, I have never had a bad performance since then. Because I have that thing in me, and it has, the more I performed for all these people, the more they liked me. Then I got another contract with Fun Factory to perform with Kenneth Mugabe every Thursday. So I had Tuesday and Thursday as my regulars, which brought so many gigs, wedding gigs, and so many friends. Very much people that just genuinely love you so much. They love what you do, and they're always going to support you. Like, so by the time I did my first show in 2019, 10th of February, it was called What Happened. It was a political show. So that's when I tried theatrical poetry, which involves more acting and shouting and all that, because you don't give your mic. So I was very scared. It was my first show, and this producer was telling me we need 500 people. I'm like, how do you plan that to work out for a poetry show? We're used to the 40. If it's a poetry, it's supposed to be 40, 50, 100 most. No one had more than that. And this guy had 500 tickets printed out. So me, I told him all I'm going to do is rehearse and get ready. I don't know who you're going to this ticket. So he's like, look, just have a ticket book with you everywhere you go. So I started rehearsing. The first 2 weeks I didn't say anything about the show to anyone. People would see posters, I didn't even have questions. We had a whole month, to the show. So in the 3rd week they pestered me, Lus, your ticket has not moved at all, the book is complete. So a particular Tuesday, I go to Rock Bar, where I hadn't been for like months now, because I didn't renew the contract. And They tell me, Lus, you should go on stage. Please go on stage. I'm like, okay, let me go on stage. But I have to talk about my show if I'm on stage. I thought they would say no. And then they said, sure, no problem. You have a show, that's dope. So I go on stage and I perform this love poem, the one in Deering, literally the Deering book. It was very new then, it was a Luganda poem. So I perform it. I remember we were performing with Bruno K. And then I talk, like people were screaming. Crazy. Remember that night I also got a wedding gig because of that poem. So people were like, this is new, because I used to do political poetry before that. So people were calling me all these things, ladies soda, what. And then the MC is like, by the way, the poet has a show coming up. And the tickets are only 10,000. The ticket book had 230 tickets. I remained with about 50 tickets by the end of the night. People bought, yes, I gave the MC the booklet. He just brought back a band of money. And just like that, 200 tickets were gone. And I had like 30 left in my book. So I was very scared now. I was like, these people are actually coming to watch the show. So I got so scared. I rehearsed a lot. I gave myself a very hard time. By the day of the show, tickets are sold out. And now we got a stamp. For those who did not get tickets, had to get stamped. And then by 6, even the stamp was out, the ink was out. Now we're approaching 1,000 people. And it was crazy. So we started people to go back home. And they refused. Tell them the show is now 30. They're like, we shall pay. So by 7, the crowd was very packed. The audience, the venue people were complaining. They're like, these people are way too many. You told us 500. And you can't tell the crowd to go. They will not go. Yeah. So either let them in or you lose them forever. So we high price it. They still pay. Now at 7, I'm scared to get on stage. I tell the producer, I can't do this. People are so many. People are very many. Because remember there was a singer singing and I would hear, it was called Noah Infectious. Because when I got scared, I told him just go on stage and do something. Because supposed to be my music guy for the show. So he starts singing and people are shouting and I'm like, all that noise, no. So until like 7:30 when I stepped on stage and people were screaming, like every single person had come because they know me. And I didn't even know I was known by 100 people. I thought it's actually forget me immediately after a performance. But they remembered and that was proof. So I performed for 3 hours. It was crazy. It was intense. I lost my voice. I remember that very night, a man walked up to me and he said, I come from Southern Sudan and I want this in my country. That was 10th of February. He's like, I want this in my country on Valentine's Day. What's your budget? And I told him my budget. I didn't even know how much it would cost me. I just told him $1,000 and was like, okay, I'll give you that with an allowance of 200 for your transportation. So I had to wake up the next day and travel to Juba for the same show. So I went to Juba and there were even more people. Way more people. This is a show that was marketed for 2 days. For 12th and 13th of Feb. And 14th, the place was full. So, I continue? Okay. So I performed for these people. And it was a very strange country. Juba was very hot. It was very hot. People would actually sleep outside. Like that was 2019 in Feb, and there were no curtains or beddings because it's that hot. And it was even hotter inside than outside. At night it was even worse. There was no ice cream. It was like, oh God, I don't even know that place. It was very, very hot. So I wanted to go home. Like the moment I stepped, I was like, I want to go back home. So I performed on 14th, on 15th, early morning. I told these guys I am leaving. I can't do this. So I left Juba. And I remember when I came back to Uganda, I was seeing things differently now. So I went independent. Yeah, I had made money. I realized that now I have people who actually can pay to watch me, and there are very many. So I stopped working for anyone. I took a break the whole of March, and I produced a show in April called A Son for a Daughter. It was a feminist product. I don't want to call myself feminist, but I love women empowerment. I really love women, a little too much, and not in any other sense that other men love women. I love those people. So all my shows have been about women. Yeah. So I did A Son for a Daughter, and it sold out at the National Theatre. So I got that confidence, and for some reason now I became the toxic one because now I had this boost in me, and I was still very young and not used to everything. Now I would spend like months without introducing myself. And I had done interviews because I had been a Fly ambassador in 2018, Fly UG ambassador. So we did so many interviews on NTV. Like, I actually had free media tours. Like, I had all these, and I was a Mixer Teens ambassador. Like, I had all these endorsements that had put me out there. And I only got to know that I'm actually remembered on my show. So now I was a different person. I wanted to do things in a very particular way. I was starting to dream big. So everyone around me felt like intimidated. And now there is a way I loved that, because these were the people that used to intimidate me. Yeah, exactly. So I started being under pressure to remain intimidating in a productive way, of course, but for myself. Very selfish. I still have that trait. That's a warning. So I started working alone. I would write my stuff, go to the theater, they would give me any date I want. They would actually cancel people's dates just to give me a date. Like, it was that serious now. So 2019 I had 3 shows. I had A Son for a Daughter, I had a show called Total Woman, and a campus tour. Now 2020, I did a show in January called Woman Chester. It was about this Muslim woman who practiced polygamy. So she wanted to play soccer as a kid, and her dad would not let her because he's a imam at the mosque, he's a sheikh. So when she grew up, she became very wild, started playing soccer, and also married off 3 men. So it was a comedy play that was rotating around. Exactly. She was defying each and every Islamic law against women. So I wrote that play with a lot of fear that it would not be accepted. My God. It was 24th of January, 2020. We marketed that play a lot. People were so interested in the story. I remember Anne Kassim bought 10 tickets. Yeah. And forced people to come to the show. So, 20,000. So we fill up the theater, and the management of the theater tells us the next day was Labor Day. No, not the next day, the day after the next day. 26th of January, that was 26th, it was a Sunday, because the show was on a Friday. So these guys tell us we want that show to air again, to be showcased again on Liberation Day. It was Liberation Day. So Anne Kasime comes, she watches the play. It was perfect. I don't even know how it became perfect, because in rehearsal there was a lot of chaos. But when these kids started acting, it was perfect. It was 1 hour and a half. So now the next day on Saturday, I received calls from the Ebonies. Anne Kasime is calling me, the theater is calling me. So I'm confused. The Ebonies wanted to buy the play. Anne Kasime wanted to buy the play. And then the theater wanted the play to be showcased again on Liberation Day. It was, yeah. So I first take the theater's deal, I showcased the play again, because it brought more money. And this one, I had to remain with my play either way. And then after that, the Ebony call. So I pay attention to the Ebonies, and they have an offer, and then the producer then told me, don't sell the play. So I didn't sell the play, I just allowed my content to be used at a certain fee. So I maintained the play, and then I got an NGO that wanted the play to go to the schools. It was funding the entire school tour. It was called FAO. I'd actually signed the contract. We signed the contract in the second week of Feb, towards Valentine's, I think. 2020. Yeah, that was before lockdown. That was when the COVID thing was starting to, but it wasn't really here at all. We didn't care because Ugandans, things have to first happen. You don't just tell them that things will happen. So we signed the contract, and like I'm seeing this big change. And the more you do all these successful works, there's a way your brand just amplifies as an artist. Like now more people want you. So that is when lockdown came in. Now I have never been too depressed than I was during the lockdown, because they announced lockdown on a Thursday, and on a Sunday my phone is broken. I was in a very toxic relationship, so they check your phone and they think it's broken. So I didn't have a phone. No, I wish I was, because it didn't break to that extent. So I'm in lockdown, no phone, and I'm stuck with this person who is very, 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 very insecure. And now I have to process the loss of my contract. Yeah. And now I have to adjust myself to no work at all. I wasn't in contact with anyone except this person. So it was very depressing. I remember not sleeping at all for so many months. And each time they said more 21 days, it was like another heartbreak. So and this is when you realize that you are nothing without social media, without this crowd. Like, this is when you realize the emptiness. Lockdown was so intense. So it was very depressing. I got suicidal for the very first time. Like, I would always hurt, but I would never reach a point where I feel like, why am I alive? But I got so suicidal, I didn't know who to talk to. So when I got a phone again, I started sharing on Facebook. Because one thing I still had was my following, and people believed in me a lot. Like the words I used to say out, where I've never had a point where my poem is opposed. Like, I've always felt like whenever I speak with poetry, people actually get it. So I started sharing on Facebook, and people paid attention, a lot of attention. So that started to bring me back. I'd gone through like this, it was very traumatizing. Now my relationship became a depression trigger, and I was seeing this therapist online, some guy from, I don't know, Australia, something like that. So a friend of mine just connected me to her therapist, because she's in Australia. So it wasn't working, because he didn't understand the situation here. You know, he didn't relate to my culture at all. He didn't even know what Uganda was. So it was weird to explain to him that poetry, you know, means this much to me. Like, poetry, really? So therapy was like funny. So I stopped. Yeah, the very first time I attempted for like 2 weeks, and it was funny. And I also hate video calls. It was never comfortable. So now the guy told me that your depression could be chronic now. Like, it will never have to recover. You just have to avoid the triggers. Now that was funny. And now I had a lot of health issues going on, because in 2018 I was diagnosed with diabetes, and I never paid attention to it because I had so much extension going on. I never quit sugars. So now during this depression, my diabetes becomes intense, and I'm like financially unstable, and there is treatment to take. And now it's affecting my prostate because it has progressed to type 2, and by the end of that it was already type 3C. So it was depressing. I remember in December of 2020, by my birthday, I was like, I had just come out from a coma. Like, my health got so bad to a point where I went into a coma, and all the doctors would say is that everything would have been fine, but there is this stress along with the body is too stressed, worn out. So I wasn't responding to any of the medication. So now I was worried. At first I wanted to die, but now I was saying that I can actually die. So I panicked and panicked and panicked, and the only thing I knew that would save me was if I resumed work. So I remember I contacted an uncle of mine who got me a partnership with KCCA to hold events during the COVID time with a maximum of 300 people. So I started putting up shows again, this time more intensely, because back then someone always organized the shows for me, but this time I wanted to learn the events myself. So I put up the first show on 10th of January, 3 days to the elections, 2021. That was last year. And it was in Entebbe, because that's where I stayed then. And everyone was telling me, Lus, who is going to come for that show? It was on a Sunday, it was in Entebbe. My dear, I posted the show like thrice, and people came. And it was limited, it was only 50 people. They all came, all the way from Kampala. We did the show, it was perfect. So we did the same tour of the show, the DRN show, to Ginger. It was perfect, that was in January. Then we staged the Kampala edition, the grand final tour on 7th of February. That's the one you came for. Whoa, that show I was sick on that day, very, very sick. But I am so grateful that I was alive to there were so many people I had never seen before, but loved me. Because I remember, during the marketing of the show, I had kept so many things in. I didn't want things to go out, because I booked comedians and artists and told them this is going to be a fundraise for my life insurance, but I don't want people to know it's a fundraise, because I want to be those artists who like beg, you know. So I didn't want that. So it reached a point, and the artists were like, if it's a fundraise, it makes a charity event, which means you have to pay us that little money that we agreed on. But then people don't know, so it makes us feel like you want to eat all the money. So the producers and partners were like, Lus, you have to tell people. So I refused. But they had all my accounts. So one time I just wake up, and this guy is telling me, he sent me a post that he had written, not yet posted, but written, to read through. So I read through, and this guy is narrating my story as me. And he's like, this is going to be posted. Either we post this, or you write your own thing that is relatable to the story. People have to know what this show is about, so that we don't have to pay these comedians extra, because they will charge you extra. So now I need all this money, because my insurance was going to cost 5 million. Plus, actually, because I wanted to get the royal package, because I had 2 chronic diseases now, a prostate disease and diabetes. You can't get those lower packages. So I had to cave and write something. Remember, I wrote that thing at night. I just narrated my story the way I always write my stuff, and made sure it's not a pity party. And woo, by the time I remember I wrote it, posted it, then slept at around 8. I woke up at noon and it had gone everywhere. Yeah, I had already sold out 100 tickets, but now I had like 300 more orders of tickets, and my permit held me only 300 people. And the poor are just sending money for the sake of it. Someone is like, I'm in Dubai, I watched you at one time, but now I want to send you money. And they send you money. It was a lot of money, and I was very overwhelmed. And then on the day of the show, because I overworked myself, when people were coming for the show, I overworked myself. Sometimes I missed doctor's appointments. I forgot to eat. So the day before the show, I get really sick. I remember I spent the night actually in the hospital on drips, painkiller drips, this and that. And then after, the next morning on the show, I was weak. I could barely move because I had this pain in my stomach because of my prostate. But people came, very many people, that the venue had to increase price. There were 330 something people because we rejected the others, told them we have sold out. So the show was magical. I was supposed to perform for 30 minutes, but I couldn't. Perform for like about 10 or 12, I don't know. It was very, very magical. And I almost didn't perform, but people had waited for me, so I had to perform. Now after that performance, there's a way I gained a more organic audience. Because after that show, I published DRN. My management told me, if you do not publish this book now, you'll never get that many sales. So I published DRN 20 days after the show. That was 27th February now. The book sold out a week. The first printing sold out a week before the launch. By the time of the launch, we had 200 more copies that also sold out on the day. Then we had like hundreds of more orders. So by mid-March, then I had my free show at TikTok, because I had a give back show. By mid-March, we had sold over 1,000 copies of DRN. The book was everywhere, and most people didn't even know who I was, but they knew the book and they knew Lus The Poet. They just didn't know the face. Then I said Lus and the band. Now that was something. I had shows every Friday from March, the whole of April to mid-May before the second lockdown. Every Friday, and every Friday would fill up. It was hard, stressful, but worth it. So now, when I said Lus and the band, that's when I get into the Rachel story. I bumped into this story where this girl needed all this help and people were ignoring. So I'd made so much money, I felt like I should just dedicate April, Lus and the band April, to Rachel. So I did so, and now I realized that people are not always too kind. Because now people I was working with, the partners all dropped out because it was a charity show and they weren't making any money. So I spent all my money on the show so Rachel could get 100% out, because she did 20 million. So the whole of April up to like the first week of May, the first Friday of May, it was all about Rachel. Now we made way more, and she got way better then, and she only went back in November. That's when the cancer came back, so now she passed on. Yeah, but before that she had actually completely recovered. So it was financially draining putting up the charity, and then the people were saying Lucy is doing this for the showbiz, blah blah blah. But I was doing it because I was there before her. Just months ago I was looking for money to treat myself. So I related to her story so much that I wanted to help, and I didn't know this person. I just knew a friend of mine who knew her. So we worked out with Rachel's fundraise. It was good. Then I lost my band night because I had no partners, so I put it on a pause. Went to the second lockdown where I published my Manchester book, which fed me the whole lockdown. Yeah, it also sold out actually now. So August, when I get into the Bottom Poetry Partnership, by then I had done so many shows. Lus and the band had very many shows already. So now the Bottom Poetry Partnership started in August, after the second lockdown. And we had so many shows. Every weekend from Friday to Sunday we had shows. From August all the way to November. So by the end of the year, we had 33 shows, all under me. All poetry, all sold out. Up to now, the only thing that still makes work very complicated is the fact that you can't trust very many people, and it can be very hectic because sometimes the people you can actually do magic with are the ones you can't trust. And then there's this loneliness that comes with being, I wouldn't call it that, I would call it being one of the good people being on the leading line of poetry for the whole country. It means now your opinions have to, everything you say, you can't even crack a joke. It makes it so difficult to have friends because you meet this person and they're exciting and you have a conversation with them innocently, and before you know it, it's somewhere in an article as a misquote. Like, we can't believe Lus thinks this about rape. We can't believe Lus thinks about. So it detached me from being social, and I just had my best friends. If you know me, you know that my best friends are everywhere I am. So the people that actually know the real me, that everyone else will never be pleased with, and it gets lonely in a way that you meet people that you are afraid of. Every new person, you're afraid of them. So if your best friend has to go to the village, then you can't hang out until your best friend is back. You know, if your best friend fails to understand a certain part of your struggle, you have to just let it go because no one else will understand. it becomes lonely because now you have way fewer options, and you limit your inner self that is so social. Because me, I really love people. I used to, because now I am afraid of them. When you're afraid, you start hating what you're afraid of. I love meeting people and like just understanding new ideas from people, observing someone else that is completely different. But it's very hard to even look at someone for a minute because they'll say, "Lus stared at me," and if you have a girlfriend, then it will be chaos, you know? So there's that loneliness. I remember at my one-man show last year, 19th of September. I don't know if you came for that one. It was at Obligato. You didn't, you missed it. I was telling, because that one was more of a conversation with the audience. It was the most beautiful performance I've ever had. People were just listening to me. So I was telling people that most people are like, I wish I had like Lus's crowd, the attention he gets, the numbers he gets. But I told them most of these people listen to the story that you're telling them and they want to just misquote it. Remember, there are people who came for my show and in the background, I had a friend of mine there who was like sit there, and these people were like, Lus says he has prostate cancer, but he hasn't lost his hair. So Lus is fucking that cancer. And like they're talking, and she's listening, and she cannot defend me. Like your friend cannot defend you because you are Lus. You know, she didn't want to be in that drama. So I was like, because my therapist told me that I should start fighting battles publicly. Because every time I suffocate these things because I'm used to like doing things my own way, I miss out on a lot of love and support. So when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which was a very early diagnosis, like it didn't even do much to me that cancer does to people, because they're already observing my prostate before I got the prostate cancer. So we expected it, and doctors were just waiting for it, you know? Yeah, exactly. So they dictate the cells in my lymph nodes, and an operation is done, but it kind of goes wrong because they did it during the lockdown, the second lockdown. So I didn't go to my actual hospital. I went to a certain branch. So it kind of went wrong, and now the cancer kind of spread, but it was still not severe. But it was cancer, so I was scared. I was very scared. It was painful. So during my show, I opened up about that experience, the trauma. That was after it had even passed. I had healed from the operation. I was just now going into my clinical trials. So that was like my last performance until after the trials. So I shared this story with these people, and these guys start talking, and then a week after the show, the things are in an article. And you're like, whoa, I should have kept quiet, you know? And I really wanted to share this because Rachel, I used to talk to Rachel, and she was like, the best thing she ever did was let her story come out. Because she made so many new friends, she got all that support. So she inspired me, and I was like, let me share this. You never know who you're inspiring. You never know who's going through the same thing but worse. So I did inspire so many people. So many people reached out to me who had like prostate cancer, survivors who had even gotten it again. But then there were these people that came and said one wrong thing. It went viral, it went everywhere. And it was very annoying. And I told my therapist, and she just told me, ignore that. They're not the reason you shared, you know? So that is why it becomes so difficult to have all these things going on. Like, you can't always speak out. People, you have the voice, but it is dictated. I write a book. I write a book, I produce a show, I do something. I share the story in any way. It doesn't have to be directly mine. It will be my story, but I'll give it to someone else to perform it. I'll coach a group of poets. That's always what I do. When I was grieving my mom, I produced Total Woman. It helped me get over the grief. When you see people honoring this story, you feel understood. And there's that relief. It doesn't go away as very soon, but every time you get into contact with someone who has quoted a line from that poem, you're like, yeah.
I hope you have picked a lesson or two. I hope you've picked a leaf from Lus's story, and I hope him sharing his story is able to show you that there is no shame in sharing your story. So if you're going through a number of stuff that you really find hard, find somebody to speak to. There is no shame in sharing your story. There is no shame in speaking about what you go through, because it helps you release those emotions. When you bottle up pain, when you bottle up things that happen to you, it becomes so hard to cope. It becomes so hard to deal with them. So I hope you're able to share, and I hope him doing this has showed you that. And if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe, like, and share this video with so many of your friends and ask them to subscribe. Let's see if we can be able to make 1,000 subscribers in this 1 month. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely week. Goodbye.
Anxiety is extra. Anxiety is a funny thing until it's not. Until you are sitting in your bed alone and your friends are asking, texting why you're not at the party. Anxiety is like being stuck into a speeding car, heading over a cliff, but not being able to escape because you are actually the driver. Anxiety is you starting to see your bed more than you see your friends. But the truth is, most days, anxiety is something you can manage until you start to see your bed more than you see your friends, until it leads you to severe depression, until it starts to make you feel like your life is a death penalty. Anxiety is a slow death penalty. Welcome to Anxiety Group. No one wants to be here.